You are not reacting because you are emotional. You are reacting because something inside you was touched before you noticed. Most people believe their reactions are spontaneous, justified, or caused by others. But reactions rarely begin where you think they do. Every sharp response, every sudden anger, every defensive tone happens faster than thought. That speed should bother you. You may believe you choose how you respond, yet your body often decides before your mind arrives. You call it instinct, personality, or honesty, but those words soften something more uncomfortable. If reactions were truly conscious, you would not regret them afterward. You would not replay conversations wishing you had paused. Something else is moving first. Something older than logic, faster than intention. Your reactions are not random. They are patterned, rehearsed, and deeply familiar to your nervous system. That familiarity feels like control. But familiarity is not the same as choice. If someone can trigger you repeatedly, predictably, then control may already be gone. And the disturbing part is how normal this feels. So ask yourself quietly, if your reactions feel automatic, who exactly is in charge when they happen? But this is where things become uncomfortable. Most people believe reactions are simply expressions of truth, honesty, or boundaries, moments where the real self finally speaks without filters. You may believe reacting strongly means you care. That emotional intensity reflects depth, authenticity, or a refusal to be passive in situations that matter. When something irritates you, it feels logical to respond immediately, as if delay would mean weakness, avoidance, or allowing disrespect to go unanswered. You tell yourself that quick reactions protect you, signal strength, and prevent others from crossing lines that should never be crossed. There is comfort in this belief because it frames reactions as intentional choices rather than automatic movements you did not consciously approve. It feels empowering to think you are decisive, emotionally aware, and responsive rather than suppressed or disconnected from what you feel. Even regret afterward does not fully challenge this belief because you assume next time you will simply react better. You trust that with enough self-control, awareness, or maturity, reactions will naturally fall in line with who you think you are. The idea that you are already in control keeps resistance low because it suggests nothing fundamental needs to change. Only refinement. After all, everyone reacts sometimes, and life is unpredictable, emotionally charged, and demanding of immediate responses. You may even pride yourself on reading situations quickly, sensing tone shifts, or responding instinctively before others notice what is happening. From this perspective, reactions feel like tools, something you wield, sharpen, and adjust depending on the situation. This belief keeps you comfortable because it frames reactions as skills rather than symptoms of something operating beneath awareness. And as long as reactions are seen as choices, there is no reason to question where they truly come from. But this sense of control is thinner than it appears, and what lies beneath it has been quietly shaping your responses all along. And this is where most people misunderstand what's really happening. If this is already making sense to you, it means you're starting to notice patterns most people never see. Subscribe and let's keep exploring how the mind really works. Now, this is where things start to get uncomfortable. At some point, you notice something unsettling. The same situations trigger the same reactions, even when you promise yourself they won't. Different people, different places, different contexts. Yet the emotional response arrives with familiar timing, tone, and intensity. This repetition should raise questions, because choice rarely behaves with such precision and consistency across unrelated moments. You may begin to sense that reactions are not created in the moment, but activated. Like switches flipped before awareness catches up, the body tightens, the voice shifts, the mind races, all before you consciously decide anything at all. That speed is important because it suggests something preloaded, something rehearsed long before the current situation appeared. You might still believe you could have stopped it. That with more discipline or awareness, control would have been possible. But noticing the delay between reaction and awareness creates doubt, a subtle crack in the story of conscious choice. If reactions happen first and explanations follow later, then what you call control may actually be interpretation. The mind dislikes this idea because it threatens identity, responsibility, and the sense of being in charge of yourself. So it resists, offering rationalizations, justifications, and narratives that restore the feeling of agency after the fact. Yet the crack remains, quietly asking why insight never arrives fast enough to stop the reaction itself. Something deeper is acting first, something that does not wait for permission or logic. And to understand what that is, we need to look deeper into how the brain learned to react at all. The brain did not evolve to wait for reflection. It evolved to keep you alive in environments where hesitation could be costly, long before language, logic, or identity formed. The nervous system learned to scan, predict, and respond instantly to perceived threats. Reactions were not moral choices. They were survival reflexes shaped by repetition, consequence, and emotional intensity. Each time a response reduced discomfort, avoided danger, or restored control, the brain recorded it as successful. Over time, these responses became faster, more efficient, and less conscious. Embedded deeply within neural pathways, the brain does not care if a threat is physical or social. It reacts to both using the same ancient circuitry. A raised voice, a dismissive tone, or perceived disrespect can activate the same systems once reserved for predators. When this happens, the brain prioritizes speed over accuracy, reaction over reflection, certainty over nuance. This is not a flaw. It is conditioning working exactly as designed, reinforcing patterns that once felt necessary. Each repeated reaction strengthens the pathway, making it more likely to fire again under similar emotional conditions. The brain learns through emotional intensity, not logic, which is why insight alone rarely changes reactive behavior. Even when you understand your reactions intellectually, the conditioned response remains intact beneath awareness. The nervous system recognizes patterns, not explanations, and responds before the conscious mind can intervene. What feels like personality is often conditioning disguised as identity. A collection of learned responses mistaken for character. The brain rewards predictability, because predictability once meant safety, even if it now causes regret or conflict. And the most unsettling part is this: the brain continues these reactions because they still provide something it values. But to see what that is, we need to look at the hidden payoff behind reacting at all. Every reaction delivers something to the brain, even the ones you regret, even the ones that damage relationships or self-respect. The payoff is rarely obvious because it hides behind discomfort, justification, and the illusion of necessity. When you react, the brain experiences relief, a release of tension that briefly restores a sense of control. That release matters more to the nervous system than long-term consequences because it signals resolution in the moment. Even anger provides clarity. It simplifies complexity, assigns blame, and narrows focus, which feels stabilizing during emotional uncertainty. Defensiveness protects self-image, preserving identity by pushing discomfort outward rather than letting it dissolve inwardly. Reactions also restore power when you feel small, unheard, or threatened. Even if that power is temporary and hollow, the brain does not evaluate morality, it evaluates outcomes. And emotional discharge often feels like success to the nervous system. Each time reacting reduces internal pressure, the brain learns that the response works, reinforcing the pattern silently. This is why restraint can feel unbearable. It denies the brain its expected release, leaving tension unresolved. and unfamiliar. You may believe you react because you are provoked. But often you react because the brain seeks completion. Completion feels safe, even when it creates external problems. Because unresolved emotion feels dangerous to the nervous system. The most uncomfortable realization is that reactions are not only triggered by others, but maintained because they serve you internally. And when something serves you consistently, even in harmful ways, it slowly becomes part of who you believe you are. And this is where reacting stops being behavior and starts becoming identity. Over time, reactions become woven into self-definition, shaping how you see yourself and how others learn to expect you. You may see yourself as passionate, intense, honest, or uncompromising. Labels that quietly protect reactive patterns. These identities feel empowering because they frame impulsive responses as traits rather than conditioned habits. Once reactions are linked to identity, questioning them feels like questioning who you are at a fundamental level. Logic struggles here because logic argues with behavior, while identity defends itself automatically. When someone suggests you overreacted, it feels personal, like an attack on character rather than a comment on behavior. The nervous system tightens, reactions flare, and the cycle reinforces itself in the name of self-protection. Even when you want to change, the identity resists. Because losing reactions feels like losing strength, voice, or authenticity. The mind equates calm with passivity, restraint with weakness, and control with suppression, making change feel dangerous. So the brain clings to familiar responses, preferring predictable discomfort over unfamiliar calm. This is why promises to react differently rarely survive the moment itself. Identity steps in before intention can act. You are not failing to control reactions. You are protecting an identity built around them. And until reactions are seen as patterns rather than personality, control will always feel forced and fragile. But there is another way to look at this, one that does not require fighting identity at all. What if reactions are not enemies to defeat, but signals revealing how the nervous system learned to protect you over time? The moment you stop seeing reactions as failures, something subtle shifts. Because resistance no longer fuels the pattern it tries to erase. Reactions lose their charge when they are observed as conditioned responses rather than personal flaws demanding correction. The brain does not need punishment or control. It responds to understanding, recognition, and the removal of false urgency. When you see a reaction forming, not as me but as this pattern, the grip loosens without effort or suppression. Awareness does not slow the reaction immediately, but it changes the relationship between attention and impulse quietly. You begin to notice the body first, the tightening, the heat, the impulse to speak or defend before words appear. This noticing interrupts identification, creating a gap where reaction is seen rather than obeyed. The gap is not forceful. It is observational, almost neutral, and therefore invisible to the part of the brain that resists control. Reactions thrive on immediacy and certainty. Observation introduces ambiguity, which weakens their authority. You are no longer arguing with the reaction or justifying it. You are watching it unfold like a familiar script, without resistance. The nervous system does not escalate because escalation requires belief in threat and urgency. The reaction still arises, but it completes itself without hijacking behavior, dissolving faster than expected. This reframing removes the hidden reward. Because attention is no longer fused with emotional discharge, the brain begins learning something new, not through instruction, but through repeated non-engagement with old urgency. This learning feels quiet, almost anticlimactic, because it lacks the drama reactions depend on. Over time, the body trusts that stillness is not danger, that delay is not loss, and that presence does not erase identity. Control emerges not as effort, but as clarity. the natural result of seeing reactions without becoming them. And when clarity replaces urgency, something internal begins to reorganize itself quietly. The change does not announce itself. It arrives as fewer regrets, shorter spirals, and reactions that lose momentum sooner. You may notice moments where the old impulse appears, but something inside no longer rushes to follow it. The body still reacts, but the mind stays present, observing sensations without translating them into immediate action. This creates a calm unfamiliar at first, because the nervous system is no longer rewarded with release through reaction. Silence appears, where noise once dominated, not forced, not practiced, but naturally occurring through awareness. You may feel space between stimulus and response, wide enough to breathe, narrow enough to feel fragile. This space is where choice begins, not as decision, but as absence of compulsion. Reactions become optional, not because you suppress them, but because they no longer define the moment. The brain adapts quietly, learning that safety does not require immediate expression or defense. This learning feels subtle because it lacks intensity, yet it reshapes how situations are experienced. You may still feel emotion deeply, but it moves through rather than taking over. The identity tied to reaction softens, replaced by something steadier, less reactive, more present, and in this quiet shift, the question changes from how to control reactions to who you are without them. Now look back at your past reactions, not with judgment, but with a steadier, quieter attention than before. Notice how predictable they were, how familiar situations produced familiar responses long before logic entered the room. See how often you believed you were choosing, when in reality you were repeating something learned, practiced, and reinforced over time. This is not an accusation. It is an observation that brings clarity rather than shame. You may recognize moments where reactions protected you, gave you voice, or restored balance when you felt unseen or unsafe. Those moments mattered, even if the cost appeared later, because they shaped how the nervous system learned to survive. At the same time, you may see how those same reactions limited you, narrowing possibilities, and repeating outcomes you never truly wanted. The mirror shows both truths at once, the usefulness and the cost, without demanding a verdict. In this reflection, there is a quiet separation between who you are and what your nervous system learned to do. That separation is subtle, but it creates freedom without effort, space without resistance, and clarity without force. You are no longer fighting reactions or obeying them. You are seeing them clearly for the first time. And in that seeing, something settles, not as an answer, but as a deeper understanding of yourself. The mirror does not ask you to change, only to notice what has always been there. And that noticing may be the most powerful shift of all. Control does not arrive through force, discipline, or suppression, but through understanding what has been moving you all along. When reactions are seen clearly, they lose the power to define action, identity, or direction. You may still feel emotion, intensity, and impulse, but they no longer decide for you. This is not mastery in the traditional sense. It is relationship awareness and space between impulse and expression. As you move forward, notice when reactions arise, not to stop them, but to recognize them without becoming them. That recognition changes the nervous system quietly, over time, without effort or resistance. If this reflection resonated, stay with this kind of exploration, where depth matters more than speed and awareness matters more than control. Psyhow exists for those willing to look inward without rushing to answers. And the next time you feel a reaction rising, pause just long enough to notice who is watching it happen.